Well, let's turn now to one of the big headlines today. One of the president's lines from the address to the UN General Assembly a little over an hour ago, as the commander-in-chief made clear his position about testing out the diplomatic path in the Iran nuclear showdown.
Since I took office, I've made it clear in letters to the supreme leader in Iran and more recently to President Rouhani that America prefers to resolve our concerns over Iran's nuclear program peacefully, although we are determined to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. We are not seeking regime change, and we respect the right of the Iranian people to access peaceful nuclear energy. Instead, we insist that the Iranian government meet its responsibilities.
Joining us now, Paul Wolfowitz. He's the former Deputy Secretary of Defense under President George W. Bush and a scholar now at the American Enterprise Institute. Nice to have you on set today.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
What's your reaction to what we heard from the President today?
Too much about humility. Not that I'm in favor of arrogance, but what the Middle East wants, what our friends in the Middle East want to hear and around the world is confidence and strength. What our enemies need to hear is confidence and strength, not, again, saying that we can't impose democracy by force as though that was ever the policy of his predecessor. It's like he's still running the 2008 campaign, and it's not what we need at the UN.
Most of our viewers might know you from your work at the Bush White House, but I was interested to note that you worked under the Carter administration.
True.
During the last time that we had any high-level talks between Iran and our country. Just take us back to that experience and what you're seeing now. A lot's happened over the last 30 years. How do you set it all in your mind, and how do you see it?
Well, I think it's interesting you take it back that far. And when I came to the Pentagon in 1977, one of the things that struck me was we were doing no planning for the Persian Gulf, but the British had announced in 1971 that they were abandoning all commitments east of Suez. And what you had basically in the 1970s was an incredible vacuum created by the British departure and nobody to fill the vacuum. Well, I'm afraid what we're seeing now with this administration is washing our hands of the region. The president boasts of ending a decade of war. Well, he's only ending the American participation in Iraq and Afghanistan. Those wars continue, and now a new worse one in Syria, all of them without any serious American effort to deal with them. And our friends in the region are crying out. The Syrian people are crying out. We don't want to hear about humility. We want help.
You've seen different styles of leadership from our presidents over the years. What works in the region?
A velvet glove and a mailed fist. It's diplomacy, but diplomacy backed up by real strength, real leverage. Ultimately, in most of these situations, a peaceful outcome is the desirable outcome. But you rarely get there if the killers, the mass murderers like Assad in Damascus, figure they can get away with not compromising.
The president did take issue with the Middle East and how America is perceived there. I'd like to play that short sound and get your thoughts in just a moment.
The situation in Syria mirrors a contradiction that has persisted in the region for decades. The United States is chastised for meddling in the region, accused of having a hand in all manner of conspiracy. At the same time, the United States is blamed for failing to do enough to solve the region's problems and for showing indifference towards suffering Muslim populations.
What do you think of that summary about how we're perceived? How does that affect our leadership? What does it mean?
I think it's wrong, and I think it's a kind of excuse for doing very little. The fact is, in Libya, which is one place where I supported what the president did, they put up a billboard in Tripoli after Gaddafi fell that said thank you for everything, and had 8 national flags, including the American flag. At the middle it had the NATO flag. Who would have said that an Arab capital would have a billboard saying thank you, NATO? I think the cause of the Syrian people today is, I think, more concerning to Arabs across the Middle East even than the Palestinian issue. And I understand the Palestinian issue is one that we're going to have issues with because we'd like to see both sides come out ahead. But in the case of Syria, there's an opportunity which we've now thrown away for 2.5 years We don't even give them gas masks, apparently. We don't even provide hospital ships offshore to treat Syrian wounded. There's so many things that we could have been doing that would produce a different situation now. And frankly, look, I understand we don't always get gratitude for the sacrifices we make. But on the other hand, we also often come much too late to the party.
If you had the opportunity to advise the President, advise Secretary Kerry on this path that we now apparently are setting out, a diplomatic path for Iran, what would be your advice? What is our leverage going into those negotiations?
Well, it's not great. The main leverage we have at the moment are sanctions, and I don't know how much you'll get for sanctions, but because it's not great, you shouldn't start giving it away easily at the beginning. That's number one. Number two, I would not take off the agenda other major issues. After all, this is a government, according to the Eric Holder Justice Department, who organized an incredible bombing effort in downtown Washington to assassinate the Saudi ambassador, and this was apparently upheld in court. I didn't make this up. If the Iranians were behind that, as it's alleged by the U.S. Justice Department, that should be a rather large issue. The mistreatment of the Iranian people. He talks about the Iranian people have a right to peaceful nuclear energy. How about the Iranian people having a right to peaceful demonstrations? You need to take on the broad agenda. At the end of the day, you're not going to get the whole agenda, but if you don't have everything on the table at the outset, if you say, with Syria, all we really care about are your chemical weapons. You can slaughter 100,000 people some other way. If you say to the Iranians, all we care about are your nuclear weapons, you can continue destabilizing Iraq and you can continue abusing your own people. Well, guess what? The best you'll get out of it is that very narrow issue.
Mr. Wolfowitz, always wish we had more time. Could talk to you for an hour. We hope you come back to the program and very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Nice
John?
to be in here temporarily.
We'll take it for however long, right, John?
That's right.